So hopefully by the end of this session, you'll understand the definition of grief, be able to learn about some of the services that we offer through the Grief Counseling Center, be able to identify common responses to loss, and hopefully learn about some coping strategies for grief, and also learn about some ways that you all might be able to support people who are experiencing grief. All right, we'll go on to the next. Sorry, is that too distracting? I don't know why it won't. Well, it's stuck. All right. We're on to definitions. Can you all see definitions? Yes. Okay. So we have up top, first of all, the definition of grief. And I might take a little bit of time right now, just even though you can see the definition, but just to give anyone the opportunity, if they'd like to share what they think about, what kind of words come to mind, or maybe even if you have a definition of grief, what comes to mind for you all when you hear that word?
Uncharted.
Uncharted? Is that what you said? Yeah, uncharted.
I just feel like you experience happiness, sadness, anger kind of regularly, but grief is, it just can come out of nowhere. You don't really know the journey of grief or about it until you are there and in the midst of it.
I know when my mom died, I dealt with a lot of anger. It totally displaced my life and took me about 2 years to recover from it.
Mm.
So anger would be the word for me.
I think
Anger.
loneliness,
Go ahead, Jan.
loneliness.
Loneliness, yeah. I'm hearing a lot of feeling words in there too. Yeah, I think that is oftentimes what we think of, right? In terms of when we think about grief and loss, we think of all those emotional reactions. So thank you all for sharing a little bit. And I'll go on with the definition, the one that you actually can see on your PowerPoint. It's really a complex process, and it's multifaceted. Grief is a response to the loss of a loved one, someone who has died, in which an affection or bond, you had that connection, that relationship with someone. And I know oftentimes we think of those emotional responses to loss, but there's all these other realms too that you'll see. The physical realm, you'll have responses in those areas, like the tiredness, things like that. Cognitively, you can be impacted. You can also be impacted spiritually. So there's all these different dimensions. So like I said, it's multifaceted and it's complex, and it is very unique to the person and to the relationship that you formed with a person. And everybody has different personalities, ways of coping, and everyone is going to respond differently. There are some similar behaviors that we do see are reported, maybe feelings are responses, but everyone is different and unique. So you'll see under the definition of grief, the definition of bereavement, which really refers to a time period after the death of a loved one. So bereavement can also occur even before, if you're anticipating the loss of a loved one, or even yourself. So, and I think I hit on this earlier, it says down there below, everyone feels grief in his or her own way, and no two grief journeys are exactly the same. So it is going to be unique to the person, to the individual, and the relationship. And even as a counselor, even though I'm considered an expert, right, in the field of this grief and loss, I can empathize with people, but no one can really totally understand a person's experience, right? Because it's that person's if they lost someone. So just keeping those kind of things in mind, I think, is helpful. We'll go on to the next slide. This is what I mentioned before with anticipatory grief. Sometimes you'll be with patients or families that might be anticipating a loss, right? So that's really that time before the loss of a loved one. So there's a lot of things that can be going on during that time period for the person. There can be almost a sense of feeling like they're in limbo because they're anticipating the loss, but it hasn't happened yet. So it's almost this time of awaiting, right? Which can cause a lot of anxiety and fear. We also, see, again, it's with the grief response, people, maybe experiencing that whole emotional facet. It could be, that fear of losing control, right? So again, it's multifaceted and complex. So we're going to go on to the next one. And this one, I guess, speaks to really what I was talking about before, those symptoms of anticipatory grief, which also can be similar to grief responses. Oftentimes, people are worried, concerned, they're feeling a lot of anxiety, which, of course, that would be a normal response. You're going through something extremely traumatic and emotionally distressing. Oftentimes, people may experience guilt. They may be asking themselves questions, should I spend more time with my loved one? Or I guess maybe if there's not really like a roadmap, I guess, so to speak, on should I be doing this way? And there's a lot of questioning and a lot of concerns that come around that. And a lot of times people can be feeling sadness, sorrow, maybe some signs of feeling depressed even. So there could also be anger wrapped up in that too. Anger, it's not fair. I mean, I think that speaks to, things like this don't make sense and it's not fair. And if we could change things, we would, right? I think that's really at the heart of loss and understanding some of these common responses. So let's see. And depending on what's going on too for the patient or the loved one, there's all sorts of medical concerns, family and friends. There could be some other dynamics going on there too. So being able to keep that in mind is helpful too. All right, we're going on to the next one. So some common questions of family and caregivers. How much time does my loved one have left? Needing to know things like that. Will I be okay after the death? What is that going to look like? Again, back to, am I doing everything that I can? Am I doing it right? Like I said, there's not really a booklet oftentimes with these kind of choices, and people need to make choices in regards to their loved ones that are important to them and what they feel is right. Feelings of, am I ever going to feel normal again? How will I ever be able to live without my loved one? And how long does getting over a loss take? And then I can probably stop right there and ask of you all, how long do you think it takes?
I don't think there really is a time frame. I think it's just how people process it individually.
Right.
Forever.
Yeah, there's not a time frame. Exactly. Oftentimes I wish there was a way to say, okay, expect in the first 1 to 3 months that this is going to happen, and then you'll go into the next stage, right? Like we oftentimes hear those stages of grief. I wish that we could say that, but it's not like that. So yeah, so understanding that too, I think, is an important aspect of that. So lots of questions, obviously. All right, going to the next one. Helpful task for those who are grieving. Oftentimes people We'll engage in life reviews, if anyone's heard of this. It's almost this history, this storytelling of the person's life, where they're able to celebrate happy events, right? And then maybe think back over memories, and maybe be looking through pictures, mementos, things like that. Another helpful task is being able to take care of unfinished business. And that's in quotation marks, unfinished business. Maybe things that they wanted to communicate to family and friends, saying thank you, or planning memorial services, right? Getting all their financial affairs in order can be helpful too, completing projects, taking trips, things like that. And I think even being able to create a space where people can discuss those hopes and fears, right? Just to be able to get it out there. I think even just validating those feelings and those experiences. And I think being able to talk about some of the fears that are associated with that too. Also, people find it helpful to have a spiritual companion if desired by the patient or family, like a chaplain that we have. Actually, we have several chaplains. I'm trying to count 1, 2, 3. Well, we have a lot here, obviously, at both organizations that will help. Nesting, a lot of times people want to put things in order, cleaning, making a sacred space. Being able, again, to talk about the loved one, allowing a safe space for sharing memory stories, processing some of the feelings too that they're having. And then also being able to take time to celebrate and memorialize loved ones, which that can be done in different ways too. Donations made to charities that were special, just anything that has that special connection with that person. And it's all different for everybody. What everybody finds meaningful is different. So keeping those things in mind. And then we're going to continue with the helpful behaviors. Again, talking, a big one, talking to and about the loved one with gentleness and respect. Being able to listen to the same stories over and over again. People need to have that space to be able to talk about their experience and their loved one. Learning to be comfortable with tears, panic, and fear. So what's it like to be in that uncomfortable space? I say uncomfortable because it says learn to be comfortable with tears, panic, and fear, and everybody's different. I'll just give an opportunity here if anyone wants to share any thoughts on that. Is everyone comfortable with being around tears, panic, and anger?
I am, yeah. It doesn't make me uncomfortable.
Right. I think oftentimes some things that may come up, I call it being in a space of like having to do some emotional heavy lifting, being in the same space with someone that's having those very, what's the right word? Difficult emotions, you know, and not feeling the need to have to fix it, right? Oftentimes we see that happening. You know, I think it's a natural response. We want to make people feel better. But this is something that's really not fixable if you think about it from in that term, right? People just need support and need to know that you're there. So that kind of goes into the next point. Your loving presence is the greatest gift you can offer. And sometimes even with silence, just knowing that you don't have to have all the right things to say, or you know, jumping in to give advice or anything like that. I think it's really just being able to be there, right? And saying things like, I can only imagine how hard this is for you. I'm so sorry for everything that you're having to go through. Things like that are oftentimes just what's needed. And sometimes, like I said, just the presence, just being there with someone, and they know that you're offering that kindness and that empathy. You can also do specific tasks for patients and family members, being able to serve a meal, sit with the patient. I know all this looks different now because we're not doing a lot of in-person, but again, being able to really be able to like run errands, doing things like that, it's all those extras that family members that takes that extra level of stress off of them, being able to do those very specific tasks. Recognizing important milestones such as birthdays, anniversaries, that's helpful too. Being able to talk to family members about common responses to caregiver stress as well as their own grief, respecting individual differences, and then also reminding patients and families that they have their own support systems, and reaching out, right, to those family members, those friends, those faith communities, colleagues, and engaging in all those different, activities, connections, again, just reminding them that there's other forms of support, I think, because oftentimes when people are experiencing the anticipation of losing a loved one, it can be so much, I think, emotionally, that you're not able to even think of like normal things that would normally just be easily to come to you. Oh, that's a solution maybe, or sometimes a reminder can help. So we'll go on to the next one. So now we're on to the not so helpful behaviors and responses. I always like to encourage people maybe to think about, which I think a lot of times these platitudes or these responses are oftentimes given and people don't realize they're probably trying to help, but they don't realize how they can be hurtful to saying common cliches like time will heal all, this is for the best. Well, I don't think anybody going through that situation losing a loved one or anticipating losing a loved one would think that that's for the best. Making other comments like, remember to count your blessings, I think really invalidates what people are going through. Again, I think people oftentimes are well-meaning and want to provide and say something, but this can cause people even more emotional distress when this is not what they need to be hearing. Things like, he wouldn't want you to cry, everything happens for a reason, and just keeping that in the back of your mind. I know, again, I think even before becoming a counselor, I can think back to some of the things that I've said to people. I'm like, oh my goodness, I wish, right, that I hadn't have said that. So just knowing that, again, people just appreciate your presence and you don't have to have all the right things to say. All right, some more not so helpful behaviors. Not matching your behavior with the tone in the room. So whatever may be going on for the family, for the patient, not matching that. So if everyone is, for example, solemn and sad, you wouldn't be laughing and happy, and right? It's kind of like respecting that space and what's going on. Not taking expressions of feelings personally. So remembering it's not about you, what's going on for the patient and the families. They're having probably are experiencing, if not the most difficult thing in life that you would have to go through. So just remembering that it's not about you, and there can be some strong feelings at times that you may be witness to. Another not so helpful behavior is not listening, maybe thinking about what your next response is going to be instead of just being there in the moment. I think another thing to think about is talking to the family that's not helpful. Could be talking to the family as if the patient's not present. So giving that person who's in the room, even, although they maybe, you know, if their eyes are closed or they're still there, that's still a person in the room, and respecting that. So another thing maybe to think about is oftentimes, you know, not jumping to comparing like your personal story with their story, right? Again, it goes back to this is what's going on for them. And yeah, oftentimes you could help if they're asking for advice, like, what, you know, what do you think about this? Or do you have a resource for this? That would be different. But, you know, comparing your experience to their experience. And then again, a not so helpful behavior is reacting to emotional responses and discussions. So staying level and even keeled, I guess, would be a good reminder as much as you can. All right, and so the next slide is best gifts you can give. So some of the best things that you have to offer are your time. Obviously, you all are making this decision and giving your time to volunteer and give back. And then your presence is another gift that you can give. Your touch, of course, when appropriate, if permissible, if you've asked permission. Your laughter when appropriate. Laughter can be healing. And also your eye contact. So being able to provide that too as well, and show respect when you're providing eye contact, like you're really engaged. Next slide speaks to how, as a volunteer, you too may experience some of these grief responses, because you're going to be impacted, right, by the people that you come in connection with, the families that you come in connection with. And if you ever feel something coming up or feel a need to talk with a counselor or a chaplain, you know, volunteer coordinator is always there to help with that too. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you need it. And so this next slide really speaks to some of the things that, or if you want to call them coping strategies or ways that you deal with grieving, or even being in this capacity, volunteering and giving back if you are experiencing some of these things. Again, talking about your experience can help. Being able to get it outside of yourself. Again, the volunteer coordinator is always available to hear about your experiences and any challenges, right, that you may be experiencing. We want you to be able to feel comfortable in communicating that. You can also read about it. We have books in the library that are available. We also have a lot of book resources if anyone's interested. Being able to write about your experience. I don't know, does anyone want to share? I could stop right here about journaling or any experiences they found helpful with writing.
Patti, since my husband passed away, I have been keeping a journal, certainly not every day, not even every week.
Mm-hmm.
At first I felt guilty because I wasn't putting everything in it. And then I thought, wait, this is for me, nobody else. And occasionally I will go back and reread some of it, and I realize I've come a long way. And I wrote things down too that I wanted to remember, some things that my husband said toward the end. And, you know, just I think it's very helpful. The key is to not worry about the format, the spelling, anything. You just jot down the thoughts, close it, and put it away. Mark it personal if you want to, so that nobody will ever open it, you know, but I think it's very helpful.
It gives you the opportunity to really reflect on your experience and maybe write about some of their feelings or things that you find important.
Something has happened to the sound. Do you hear that, Ryan? Okay.
Patti, if you wouldn't mind muting yourself and then unmuting and see if that like helps reset.
All right.
Now try that again, Patti.
No.
Yeah, it sounds very robotic.
What did I do? I just hit mute and unmute.
I don't think that one's on you yet. Patti, try again.
Still robotic.
Yes.
Don't know.
Twilight Zone.
Yeah. Hey, Patti, come switch computers with me.
The presentations this afternoon and today have been really great. I think too, I wrote down a lot of things my dad said and my father-in-law said those last couple of weeks. And I just feel so lucky to have that documented. It's just so special.
Okay, here we go. Okay. We good now? We had to play musical chairs. I'm not a robot anymore, right? Okay. Okay. It looks like everybody's muted now too, so maybe that'll help. Okay. So we were talking about journaling and writing about experiences and feelings and how that can be helpful in this process too. Also, you'll see another point on there on the PowerPoint, praying or meditating. You know, that may be a practice that you already engage in, right? Or have an intention that you, you know, want to start out your day that way, or just being really intentional about creating that time to reflect. If you're already doing practices like that, but being able to reflect on your hospice volunteer work. It can be really centering and calming. A lot of people find benefit in that. Participating in a healing ritual. You know, oftentimes volunteers may want to attend a visitation, funeral, being able to engage in some of those healing rituals like lighting a candle, saying a prayer, sending cards, you know, with a specific patient or family members. Then also being able to do something physical, like walking, jogging, swimming, working it out that way, golfing, tennis, there's a whole list. And you all may be engaging in those activities already. But it does help to be able to have, you know, these ideas, these go-tos, these ways of coping. Just, I think it's important to think about that too. You know, it's really a time where you can focus on yourself and give back to yourself and replenish your cup. If you think about it as your energy level, your emotional energy level, your physical energy level, being able to put things in that cup that give back to you and fill up your cups as you're giving to others, I think is a helpful way to look at it. And that carries over into this next slide with compassion fatigue. So many of you may have already heard of this term before, maybe not, that's okay. So that really refers to when people that are in helping roles, it could be even doing volunteer work, right, are not tending, I guess, if you want to call it tending, or managing their own feelings and needs, right? Not taking that time to focus on what fills you up, what fills up your cup. Burnout or compassion fatigue may result. So some of the signs that you may be experiencing this are emotional numbness, being easily irritated, not really able to find satisfaction in the volunteer experience any longer. Those can be signs of burnout. And also, you know, if you ever find yourself going through this or, you know, finding yourself in this situation, please don't hesitate to reach out to the volunteer coordinator to discuss what's going on. All right. Maybe before we go on to this next slide, because I'm noticing we're okay on time. It's 3:42. Does anyone want to share any thoughts on coping strategies or things that they find helpful that kind of fill their cup?
My biggest thing is just going for walks. I like to go for walks to help clear everything in my head.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And being able to be outside too, I think being in nature can be healing. Anybody else want to share? You're muted, Jan.
Oh, there we go. At least I don't turn into a robot. I talk to my mom and I talk to my husband. Not necessarily in front of other people or even in full sentences, but there are things that remind me of them, moments I want to share something, and I just talk to them. And I always kind of feel a peacefulness when I do that.
Yeah.
That works for me.
Yeah. And everybody's so different. Thank you for sharing and what they find that helps them, right? I could sit here and give you this long list of things to do, like all these, like walking or jogging or talking to other people. But I think everyone knows inherently what's going to work for them, right? What gives them that peace and that comfort, and just, you know, being able to keep that in mind, I think is important too. So, okay, we can go on to the next one now. All right, so the Grief Counseling Center, a snippet on this, Medicare requires hospice organizations to offer 13 months of bereavement services to families and primary caregivers of patients. We also provide grief counseling to anyone in the community free of charge who's had a loss of a loved one. So like I said, everything is free of charge. No one has to pay for services. We don't bill insurance, not reimbursed in any way. So we rely totally on you know, donations and public support and fundraisers. And then, of course, reiterating, individual counseling is offered to families and caregivers following a death related to loss. We also do provide, even beforehand, if anyone wants to see us before the loss, we provide counseling for people at that time as well. We offer lots of different grief support groups for adults, a lot of educational groups, and different specific types of groups. And we have a mailing program that's called Seasons, that's sent out during the course of 13 months at different times. That is really a good resource because it has lots of educational information, suggestions, and guidance about the grief journey. And in addition to support groups and counseling, we have a lot of different educational events that we offer throughout the year. We have an annual holiday program that we do, memorial services and other activities. And then also we offer support services to children and adolescents up to age 18. We do the same types of things, and we also provide things specifically for children to special educational one. We used to do field trips and way back before COVID, but hopefully in the future we'll be able to re-engage in some of those things.